Hey, good morning, everyone. Not much of a delay. I mean, yes, slightly. Apologies for that. Straight away in the morning. But who we have here? We have Mr. Dr. Daya out here. Will be actually sharing us, what you see on the screen, rather than me taking much of a time. Over to you, Mr. Daya. You can start.
Okay, good morning, folks, and thank you to the Mumbai AI Summit. I think they're doing a commendable job given all the context that we have right now. So I hope all of India and Mumbai especially comes back sprinting very soon. So good morning. Today, I'll take a few minutes. In a few minutes, I mean about not more than 5 to 6 minutes on laying the context of why nurturing an AI research ecosystem is important in India. So I know that you've been talking about the great and the awesome things that AI can do. But we need to also look at how we need to build this capability within India. So far, what we've been doing and what we've been doing really well is to adapt some of the AI and ML technologies that have happened elsewhere and taken it in and then given it a nice context. So that really sets the context for why this is very critical. One, it is that we believe that the technology, AI, ML, and the associated applications are going to form an important part of transforming a lot of what India does and what India can do. And there are also a lot of socio-cultural implications. For example, healthcare, which is in the news as we speak, can get positively impacted in a country like India, where we have abysmally low numbers of doctors, hospital beds, nursing staff, etc., for a population such large as ours. So, direct implication for making citizens' lives better. And from an industry perspective, we've already seen, and I'm sure that you're all in the midst of it, disrupts industries. A lot of startups get, started, generated because of the technology changes that are happening right now in AI and ML. And finally, one of India's largest industry segment, IT services, is also getting impacted by the AI and ML technologies. So, in short, we need to be well on top of this technology, not just adapting this technology, but also making significant contributions in terms of building a capability, in terms of the newer algorithms and the models, as well as ensuring that a good proportion of students, especially those who are in the engineering streams, are well aware of what this technology can do, right? So that's essentially the context. And we did a study about a year and a half back in terms of primary interviews with researchers and technologists working on AI and ML in India. So we interviewed about 25 people, and then over the past year, it has gone up to about 35 to 40 people. And what we found was pretty interesting. We realized that India-focused AI ML research is coming of age. So no more are researchers working on problems that don't concern a large number of Indians. For example, there's research going on how to make monsoon prediction in a couple of months. That's the big thing, right? So how do you make better quality monsoon predictions? How do you model floods? The interesting thing, which has a lot of applications and which most of you might have seen or used, but from MNC, is how Indian language processing work. I mean, you can speak to your phone or your remote in many Indian languages today, but they're all done by MNCs. So it's good. It's good to have an Indian version of this, which is probably better and which can translate much more efficiently between Indian languages. So that's something that our folks are working on. Something which will be of use to us when India opens up is the road conditions, right? How is it that Indian roads, where are the potholes and where are the bumps which are not marked and things like that, which will probably make for a better driving experience for us. Right now, we rely on maps, which is again from a few MNC companies. But how do we Indians really make use of this? And one of the things, if these capabilities are generated by Indian, especially Indian public universities, the cost of it might be much cheaper than what we pay to these MNCs right now. So that's one aspect of it. The other one is that we really have the talent. So we have about 75 top-notch principal investigators in AI. So this goes up to a few thousands in the US and probably a few hundreds in China. So we really need to ramp up there, but we're doing okay. So we are ranked number third in terms of the citable documents which are in the AI ML domain. And probably the best news is that 90% of these principal investigators are working with industry. So we are not in a bad shape in terms of some of these technology applications translating into real world applications. So, what do we do to strengthen the AI ML research system? So, we know we have a base. So, how do we build on it? The first, really, the foundational layer is in terms of increasing the number of PhD students. So, typically in India, we have about roughly 2 to 3 PhD students per faculty. That goes up to about 10 in the US because of the of the kind of support infra that is built around the lab and the faculty. So we really need to at least look to ramp up to about 5 PhD students per faculty. The second one where we are actually woefully short right now is in terms of the computing infra. So what we find is that the Indian labs typically have Indian labs probably don't have their own dedicated compute infra. It's a central infra which is typically less than 100 GPU right now. Most of the universities in the US and China are running into hundreds of GPUs. And of course, big daddies like Google and Facebook, they have a whole, different league of computing infra that's available to their researchers. So we need to get to more labs having about 100 GPUs to start with, or even at least 50, 60 GPUs. So that's a big one. That requires money. So we think that it's probably about 1 crore required, or 1 crore rupees, Indian rupees, that's required for a lab to kind of get a good quality compute infra. The next is in terms of the programs. So typically, Indian research happens in silos, right? So these computer science guys who are doing researchers and faculty members who are doing research in AI ML doesn't really get translated into applications because they say that, hey, we've done the algorithms, we've done the models. Now it's somebody else to come and take it and make it into an application. So what these centers of excellence do is to have these folks who are working in allied areas, maybe some other engineering discipline, like let's say chemical engineering or management, sit together along with the computer science and AI ML researchers, and then ensure that these models are taken and then converted into applications in different domains. So, so one of the things that make these possible and make it easier is the availability of India data sets. So India is increasingly going digital, which means that we have a good set of data which is digital and which is labeled. But unfortunately, it exists in different places, and even the public data is not very well organized. So there needs to be a concerted effort by governments, by private industry, by different universities to kind of get this data, clean it up, and make it available for our researchers. And we believe that some of this data, at least the public data, needs to be open to all, including our startups, so that interesting innovation happens around it. And finally, in terms of programs, I think we are ripe to have grand challenges kind of initiatives in India around AI ML. I think all of you might remember that whatever we see in autonomous vehicles today is essentially because of the grand challenge in autonomous driving, which was conducted by DARPA in the US. So if you look at any team which is at the forefront of autonomous vehicles today, can be traced back to one of the teams that participated in that DARPA challenge. Hopefully something like that will happen in India. So finally, at the top of strengthening the ecosystem, research ecosystem at least, is to convert some of this the research that happens into IP. And IP can be licensed, not always need to be at a very high exorbitant cost. So our startups, our industry can use Indian IP in AI ML and innovate and build on top of that. So that essentially is what we need to do. So the build on the foundation, run the programs, and then reap the rewards in terms of IP and the new startups and new innovation. So let me stop here with the presentation, and happy to get to hear your views and discuss more on any of the topics which we just saw.
Okay. Thank you so much there. So members, you can click on raise hand to come on stage and ask a question to Mr. Daya, or else you can actually, put in your questions at the question section, so where you can address it. Anyone wants to, come on stage, I'll be happy to accept the request and hand over the mic to that person. So the raise hand link or the icon, yes, perfect. We have someone out here. We have Sanjay. Okay, Sanjay, we are taking some time. More members can actually, even raise the hand, so you'll be in the queue. Okay, I think we lost Sanjay for some time. So there's a question in the question section where Abhishek is asking. So I'm going to read it out to you, Mr. Daya. So it is, how do you see policymakers or government agencies playing an active role in India?
Sure, yeah, that's a good question. So, as I said, one of the things that we need to do, as I said, I mean, let's look at the foundational layer. So, we need to have extra scholarships, perhaps, to attract students to do PhD and continue to do a postdoc in India. So, right now, the stipends don't compare with what stipends to by good students in India, in the US or in Europe, right? So, most of the folks finish their bachelor's or master's and then get over to the US or Europe to do their PhD. So we need to retain them. The next one is to actually have a large program. I mean, Niti Aayog and MIT and especially NIC are working on it to put together a good compute infra. So first one is a common infra which researchers across India can share, typically in the region of a few hundred GPUs. And I think also make available individual labs, AI ML labs in Indian universities to invest in their own computer infra. So that's two on the foundational layer. And in the program layer, the initial set of programs, especially the grand challenges, need to come from an organization like Niti Aayog, right? They've been talking about it. They've been talking about grand challenges, especially in areas that are important for India, like healthcare and agriculture. So I think they really need to jumpstart these programs and ensure that there's a participation from a large number of our researchers in these grand challenges. And finally, in terms of licensing out the IPs, I think there are a few universities like IIT Madras who have a good licensing policy, which works both for the corporate or the startup as well as the faculty members and researchers who have developed the IP. So, what I personally like to see is a lot more of these faculty members and students starting up and getting grants from an organization like DST or MIT to ensure that the work that they do in terms of their research gets translated into applications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that one. So we have a raise hand, so I'm just picking up the request from there. Let's see. Hi, Rahul. Hello, Rahul, can you hear us?
Hi.
Rahul, you're live. You can talk.
Yeah, I
If you're
can
able to
hear
hear
you.
us. Okay, I think Rahul is not able to. I'm going to give it to the next person. Okay, Milan, can you hear us? Hello? Okay,
Hi, Milind here.
yeah.
Hi,
Please.
I have one question about why there is no big investment coming in this kind of a setting up of a large AI ML DL research like what America did in last 10 years. Why Indian government, why VCs, why investors are not coming forward to create a lot of made in India products like maybe Zoom or maybe kind of a Indian platform for Indian people at affordable prices.
Sure, good question, Milan. So let me take the part where our research gets translated into products. So that's what we're discussing here. So one of the things is that traditionally Indian academic research has been slow to translate some of that into applications. It's started off in the last 5 to 10 years. So one of the things that has happened is that it's easier for our faculty members and for our students in at least the IITs and IISc and some of the better engineering colleges to do this. I mean, they've been given the support. There are these incubators and entrepreneurship cells in the institutes which are doing so. So, for example, we have a nice company in IIT Madras Unifor, which is into translation essentially. This was born out of the work that these folks did when they were studying, right? So it's happening, but it needs to happen at a much quicker level. And we hope it happens. And I think there needs to be a lot of grant funding. I mean, you talked about VCs and you talked about angels and things like that. But initially, to start with, these folks need no questions asked grants. Not too high, maybe a few lakhs of rupees is what they need. That I think is happening, but happening slowly. But our sense is that folks realize that this is important, and maybe in the next 3 years we'll see a lot more action.
Can you help? There is one opportunity. If somebody is ready to fund this kind of a complete innovation, grassroots greenfield innovation, that person is ready to fund for in India. Will anybody help in setting up technology or giving up the entire setup what you have created? Is it possible somebody come on give some kind of a basic roadmap as how this can be built, what can be done? He has a lot of money and he wants to do it for a good cause, maybe for healthcare, maybe for education, maybe for agriculture.
Right. I mean, there are these incubators which work in the IITs. So they would be a first port of call because they have a lot of proposals from their faculties and their students. So they're sitting on it, and I think it's best for anybody who's having the having the funds to reach out to these incubator cells in the IITs. And they're also looking for some funding. I think that that's probably the best match that I can think of in terms of taking Indian research into the market, accelerating taking Indian research into the market. Yeah.
Okay.
Post-COVID, there will be a lot of requirements in healthcare, and that is first priority can come to healthcare and agriculture. Education can take a next level. That is not a very big issue, but this is what is going to change our country or in a global market, and there are big opportunities available now.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Milan. Due to time constraint, we have to pick up a few more questions as well from others.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. So, Mr. Daya, we can continue the presentation and then maybe we can close. Do you have more?
Yeah, I just see another question from Carl on Indian data sets, health tech space, leading players, its evolution, challenges, and trends in the next 6 to 18 months. So, okay, so health data of Indians is personal data, right? And everybody knows that there is a PDP, the Personal Data Protection Bill, that is there in somewhere. I don't know where, but we're expecting a PDP bill to come there. So, so if you're looking for health-related data, so it's personal data, and there's going to be a lot of care taken in terms of how this will be shared. But what we realize is that there are a lot of hospitals which are collecting health-related data. They've anonymized the data, and they're willing to share it with neutral, quote-unquote, neutral players like the universities, like the IITs. And some of the IITs are working with health-related data. I'm not too sure on how easy is it going to be for some of these health services players, especially in the context of the personal data bill, to share it with the private sector as of now. So there needs to be a lot of care taken to ensure that the data is anonymized and anonymized correctly, so that it's not de-anonymized that easily and think. But I think, yeah, we should ensure that anonymized health data is shared, especially with Indian startups. Forget the MNCs for a minute, because I think there's a lot of things that we can do for our own country. Thank you.
Sure then. So do you want to share a few more slides, or shall we do another question, Mr. Daya?
Yeah, I think we can do another question. I see another question from Abhishek.
Okay.
So how do you protect IP to give incentives for corporates to take R&D and price at premium versus ensuring technology reached out to the grassroots levels? So, okay. So this is a great question. So there are multiple ways in which you can protect IP and you can price your IP, right? So they might be, let me just take the context that we are discussing right now, which is research and innovation happening predominantly at the universities and at the national labs. So if you are generating IP from a public funded research project, so, for example, let's take an IIT working on an AI ML project, developing a model, and it's been funded by one of the ministries of the Indian government. Then that IP ideally should be free because it's been funded by the public, all of us in some sense, right? So, and should be free for use by any Indian entity at least. And we should ensure that there are proper IP agreements in place so that the IP is, in some sense, protected and not abused. But there need not be a monetary transaction. But if there is there is an IP that's been created by an academic project which is not being funded by a public grant in any way, but it's been faculty members and students working on a side project or something, then they probably will need to look at both IP protection in terms of licensing agreements. At the same time, they might have a have a commercial aspect to license this IP. I mean, at what price they license the IP depends on a lot of factors, which I'm sure all of you are well aware of. But that's how I see it playing out.
Okay. Mr. Dev, can you stop sharing the screen so that you can be full screen?
Oh, okay, fine.
Okay.
Right.
Sure. Thank you so much.
So, okay. So
yes, I think there's one more question, right? Thank you for the inputs. I have worked with investment from hospital, and the issue is the quality of data. I think we are.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
I think you've kind of
Yes.
covered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. I think thank you so much for everyone, and thank you, Dr. Daya, for being out here. I think it was a good start for the day for sure. I think it was a pretty thought provoking. I can see a pretty very serious questions as well. I'm sure you might be having more questions, audience. You know what we like you to do. You can actually drop in maybe in the chat section or to the team, and then they're going to reach out to Mr. Daya and make sure it has been answered by him only. So we are not going to do that one. So it is through him. Yeah.
Happy to.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you
Sure.
for AI Mumbai Summit, and thank you for all of you who've taken time. Stay safe,
Sure.
and let's get back and hit the road soon with all the innovation. Thank you.
Sure,
Bye-bye.
sure. Okay. Big round of applause. You know how to do it. You know, from the bottom of the screen, you can see an emoji. Just keep doing that one. Thank you so much. We'll be back in next session in just a minute.